On a cold February morning, a young woman disappeared, leaving her family and the entire country in shock. No one could have predicted that what started as an ordinary day would turn into one of the most intricate cases. The case of Rebecca Reusch remains one of Germany's most intricate and fascinating unsolved mysteries. It is not only the tragic circumstances of her disappearance that make it so intriguing, but also the strange twists in the investigation and the conflicting theories. Dear viewers, liking, commenting, and subscribing only takes a few seconds, but it means so much to us. Every click and comment fuels our passion. Thanks. Rebecca Reusch, born on September 21, 2003, in the heart of Germany's capital, Berlin, led a seemingly typical life for a girl of her age. She was the youngest daughter of Bernd and Brigitte Reusch, with two older sisters, Jessica and Vivian. While Jessica and Vivian had both moved out after getting married, Rebecca remained at home, living with her parents in the quiet neighborhood of Britz in Berlin's Neukölln district. At the age of 15, she was a student at Walter Gropius School, having recently transitioned to this institution where she was enrolled in the 10th grade. Despite her cheerful and outgoing demeanor, some of Rebecca's classmates observed a more somber side to her personality in the months leading up to her disappearance. According to these reports, Rebecca appeared to be experiencing bouts of depression, feeling uncertain about her future, and grappling with the typical adolescent search for identity and meaning in life. Some speculated that this might have been a response to the immense pressure she felt, both socially and academically. However, outside the school environment, Rebecca was known for her vibrant spirit and social nature. She thrived on making new friends, was deeply involved in social media, and amassed a large following, over 30,000 across her various platforms. Among her family, Rebecca was especially close to her older sister Jessica, who, at the time of the incident, was 27 years old. Jessica lived nearby with her husband, Florian Archer, aged 28, and their young daughter. The relationship between the sisters was described as one of deep affection, with Rebecca frequently visiting Jessica's house on weekends to spend time with her niece, to whom she was particularly attached. The events that transpired in the days leading up to Rebecca's disappearance seemed routine, but they were anything but. On February 17, 2019, a Sunday, Rebecca asked her parents if she could spend the night at Jessica's house. Florian was attending an office party that evening, leaving the two sisters and Jessica's daughter alone in the house. The plan was to spend the evening watching movies and eating pizza. Rebecca's mother, Brigitte, agreed to the stay on the condition that Rebecca attend school the next day. Rebecca promised she wouldn't skip class, and with that, her stay was approved. The evening at Jessica's house passed without incident. Rebecca and her sister spent the night as planned, and around 8 p.m., Rebecca sent a selfie to Vivian, their other sister. That moment would mark Vivian's last contact with Rebecca. Later that night, around midnight, Jessica went to bed upstairs while Rebecca stayed downstairs, sleeping on the living room sofa. Florian returned home from his office party around 5:45 a.m. He reported that he changed his clothes and immediately went to bed without interacting with Rebecca. Shortly after 7 a.m., Jessica woke up, dropped her daughter off at daycare, and then left for work. At around the same time, Brigitte attempted to contact Rebecca to ensure she was awake and preparing for school. When the call went unanswered and went straight to voicemail, Brigitte initially assumed Rebecca's phone had run out of battery. She reached out to Jessica for reassurance, and Jessica explained that Rebecca's school day wasn't due to start until 9:40 a.m., easing their mother's concerns for the time being. However, this small exchange marked the beginning of a harrowing ordeal. By mid-morning, Rebecca was missing. What transpired between the hours of 5:45 a.m., when Florian came home, and 7:15 a.m., when Jessica left, remains shrouded in mystery. Between 7 and 7:46 a.m., on the morning of Rebecca's disappearance, she sent a Snapchat photo to a friend. The photo, like all on Snapchat, was automatically deleted after being viewed, so the exact time it was taken is uncertain. However, it was seen by Rebecca's friend at 8:15 a.m., providing one of the last known visual clues of her whereabouts. In the photo, Rebecca was seen in a hallway, dressed in a BTS sweatshirt with Rap Monster emblazoned on the back, a pink fleece jacket, ripped jeans, and black and white Vans sneakers. This casual outfit, typical for a teenager, would later become a focal point of the investigation, as it was the last known description of Rebecca on the morning she vanished. At 8:25 a.m., Rebecca's mother, Bridget, tried calling her daughter for the second time that morning. But once again, the call went directly to voicemail. By now, her concern had begun to deepen, sensing something was off. Rebecca usually responded promptly, even if she was at school or on her way. Worried, Bridget reached out to her son-in-law, Florian, who had returned from his office party earlier that morning, admittedly drunk and extremely tired. Although Florian heard his phone ring, he chose not to answer due to exhaustion. When Bridget couldn't reach Florian, she contacted her older daughter, Jessica, and informed her that she had been trying to get in touch with Florian, but without success. Jessica, now alarmed herself, called Florian multiple times, and after several unanswered calls, he finally picked up, woken by the persistent ringing. Jessica relayed her mother's request, asking Florian to check on Rebecca to ensure she was awake and getting ready for school. A few minutes later, Bridget called Florian again, and this time he answered. Complying with her request, he went to the living room to check on Rebecca. When he looked around, however, Rebecca was not there. He told Bridget that Rebecca was gone, which initially brought her a small measure of relief. Bridget assumed Rebecca had left for school early, perhaps running late, or simply wanting to get a head start on the day. She sent Rebecca a message that read, "Hello, my dear. I hope you arrived at school on time. I couldn't reach you. Kiss." The message showed 2 dots, indicating it had been delivered but not yet read. This gave Bridget comfort at first, thinking Rebecca was already at school and hadn't responded because her phone might have been charging or she was in class. However, as time passed and 9:40 a.m., Rebecca's first class of the day came and went. Her absence became noticeable. She hadn't shown up at school, and her teachers grew concerned. Rebecca was not the type to skip class without reason, and her absence raised alarm bells. The school reached out to her parents, hoping to clarify whether Rebecca was at home, and simply hadn't informed them of her absence. Upon learning that Rebecca had not made it to school, Bridget's concern transformed into full-blown panic. She quickly informed Barrett, Rebecca's father, who was at work, and they decided to immediately go to the police station to report their daughter missing. When Barrett and Bridget arrived at the police station, they explained the situation in detail, emphasizing that Rebecca would never disappear voluntarily. She was a responsible teenager, close with her family, and always communicated her plans. Despite the growing desperation of her parents, the police informed them that they could not officially launch a missing person investigation until Rebecca had been missing for 24 hours, as was protocol in such cases. This policy left Rebecca's parents feeling helpless, as precious time seemed to be slipping away without any action being taken by authorities. Realizing that they would need to take matters into their own hands, Barrett and Bridget decided to start searching for Rebecca themselves. Their first stop was Rebecca's school, where they searched the area around it, hoping to find some clue of her whereabouts. They approached passers-by on the street, showing them a photo of Rebecca and asking if anyone had seen her that morning. Unfortunately, no one had seen anything unusual, and there was no sign of Rebecca in the vicinity of the school. As their concern mounted, they began calling Rebecca's friends, hoping one of them might know where she was or had been in contact with her that morning. To their dismay, none of her friends had seen or heard from Rebecca, leaving her parents increasingly distressed. They also called extended family members to inform them of the situation and to widen the network of people looking for her. Desperate for any possible lead, Rebecca's family took to social media, posting about her disappearance on Facebook. The post included a clear photo of Rebecca, along with all the details they could provide: what she was wearing, her last known location, and the times when she had last been in contact with others. Their hope was that someone in the online community might have seen Rebecca or could provide a clue as to where she might be. The hours after Rebecca's disappearance were agonizing for her family. Every minute that passed without news made the situation feel more dire, as they feared the worst, but clung to the hope that she might simply turn up somewhere safe. Yet, with no sightings, no phone calls, and no leads, the uncertainty of Rebecca's fate would only deepen the mystery surrounding her case. It wasn't until February 19, the day after Rebecca went missing, that the police initiated their official search efforts. For her family, the delay was a source of deep frustration and disappointment. Every hour that passed felt like a lifetime, and in missing person cases, time is critical. Yet, despite their pleas, the authorities had stuck to the 24-hour waiting period before officially starting the search. Rebecca's parents, Bridget and Barrett, were further angered by the police's actions when they began to distribute information about the missing girl. Although the family had provided multiple photos of Rebecca for public dissemination, the police chose to use an image from her Instagram account where she was heavily made up and using a filter. This particular photo made her appear much older than her 15 years, and her family worried that it could hinder any potential identification by people on the street. 2 days later, on February 21st, the German authorities officially declared Rebecca Reusch as a missing person. Along with this declaration, they provided a detailed description of the girl and what she was last seen carrying. According to their statement, Rebecca was last known to be wearing a pink jacket, a BTS sweatshirt, carrying a Vans backpack, a purple blanket, her cell phone, and even a camera. This prompted many people following the case to speculate whether Rebecca might have run away from home. The theory gained traction because it seemed like she had packed more than what was necessary for just one night at her sister's house. However, this theory was quickly debunked by the family. Rebecca often carried these same items with her everywhere, regardless of where she was going. Furthermore, there were no known conflicts within the family, and no reason that would have driven her to run away. Even the police, after initially considering the runaway angle, dismissed it due to the lack of any solid evidence pointing in that direction. By this point, Rebecca's case had garnered substantial media attention across Germany. The press began following the story closely, and the public became increasingly invested in the mystery surrounding her disappearance. On February 23, a specialized serious crime squad took over the investigation, and this marked the beginning of more intense search efforts. Over the next several days, authorities conducted thorough searches in Berlin and its surrounding areas. Every location that Rebecca might have visited was scoured, from her family's home to the homes of her sisters, from her school to her favorite hangouts. Despite the comprehensive nature of these searches, no tangible evidence or trace of Rebecca was found. Among the various individuals questioned by the police, one name quickly rose to the top of their list: Rebecca's brother-in-law, Florian. On February 28th, he was taken into custody for questioning. Florian, who had been married to Rebecca's sister Jessica for several years and was the father of her niece, suddenly found himself the prime suspect in the eyes of the authorities. He was interrogated for hours, but despite the police's suspicions, he was released the next day on March 1 without being charged. According to police theories, Florian had come home drunk in the early hours of February 18th and might have acted inappropriately towards Rebecca, with disastrous consequences. They believed he could have disposed of her afterward. Rebecca's family, however, was horrified by this suggestion. To them, Florian was a trusted and beloved family member. They argued that Rebecca had spent countless weekends at her sister's house without any indication that Florian harbored ill intentions towards her. The accusation, in their view, made no sense. The investigation pressed on, but Rebecca's whereabouts remained a mystery. Helicopters scoured the skies above Berlin, searching remote areas in case she had wandered off or been taken far away. Search dogs were brought in to try and pick up her scent, but their efforts led nowhere. As days passed without any breakthroughs, public pressure mounted, demanding answers that were not forthcoming. Then, on March 4th, the case took another dramatic turn when Florian was arrested again. The police revealed that they had uncovered inconsistencies in his testimony that further fueled their suspicions. Florian had previously claimed that after returning home from the office party at around 5:45 a.m., he had immediately gone to bed due to exhaustion. However, an investigation of his phone records painted a different picture. Authorities found evidence that Florian had been active online for several hours after his alleged return to the house. According to the police, he had sent multiple text messages to friends and had accessed adult content websites, directly contradicting his earlier claim that he had gone straight to sleep. This revelation only deepened the police's belief that Florian might have been involved in Rebecca's disappearance. Despite this new evidence, the family continued to stand by Florian, vehemently defending him against the accusations. To them, the idea that Florian could have harmed Rebecca was inconceivable. Yet, the authorities were not so easily convinced. As the investigation into Florian's activities continued, the search for Rebecca grew more desperate. While the police focused their attention on Florian, the public speculated whether someone else could have been involved, or if perhaps Rebecca had met a tragic fate elsewhere. With each passing day, the questions grew more numerous, but the answers remained elusive. For the police, Florian's inconsistent testimony about his actions on the morning of February 18 raised significant suspicions. The police were left asking themselves, why would Florian lie about such a seemingly trivial detail? In their eyes, this was not just an innocent omission, but a potential sign that he was hiding something far more sinister. This inconsistency made him the prime suspect in Rebecca's disappearance. The lack of security camera footage capturing Rebecca on her way to school further fueled their suspicion. Rebecca had planned to walk from her sister's house to a nearby bus stop, and in a modern city like Berlin, with cameras at nearly every street corner, it seemed strange that no footage of her journey had surfaced. Surveillance cameras from neighboring houses and local businesses, which were common in most urban areas, failed to record any trace of her. This led investigators to an unsettling conclusion. Perhaps Rebecca never left her sister's house that morning. The absence of witnesses or footage indicated that Rebecca's planned walk to the bus stop might not have happened at all. It seemed increasingly likely that whatever had happened to her had occurred at or near the house, not on her intended route. With Florian now firmly in their crosshairs, the police began to intensify their investigation. While Florian was in custody for the second time, the search for Rebecca Reusch continued unabated. The authorities concentrated their efforts on the natural areas around Berlin, such as forests, rivers, and lakes, where a body might have been hidden. Police officers, search and rescue teams, and volunteers scoured these locations, hoping to find some trace of Rebecca. Yet, despite the exhaustive searches, no physical evidence, no clothing, personal items, or remains were found. The family home of Jessica and Florian also became a focal point of the investigation. If the police theory was correct, this house was the crime scene where something terrible had happened to Rebecca. To explore this possibility, a specialized forensic team was dispatched to comb the house for any shred of evidence. They brought with them tools and techniques designed to detect even the smallest traces of blood, hoping to confirm their growing suspicions. In addition, trained search dogs were brought in to detect scents that might lead them to Rebecca. Despite their best efforts, the searches yielded nothing. No blood, no clues, no signs of struggle. On March 6th, Michael Hoffman, the lead detective in charge of the investigation, made a public appeal on a prominent German TV program. Standing before a national audience, he urged anyone with information about Rebecca's disappearance to come forward and contact the authorities. It was during this broadcast that Hoffman revealed a new piece of information that sent shockwaves through those following the case. The police had received credible reports that Florian had been seen driving along the A12 highway on the morning of February 18, the very day Rebecca went missing, and again the following night on February 19. To underscore the importance of this sighting, Hoffman even presented images of Florian's car captured by roadside cameras, asking viewers to report any suspicious behavior they might have witnessed involving the vehicle. This revelation further deepened the case's intrigue. The A12 highway is a major federal road that stretches from Berlin to the border of Poland, a route often used for long-distance travel. Florian's car, a cherry red Renault Twingo, had been spotted by cameras at approximately 10:40 a.m. on February 18, just a few hours after Rebecca was last seen. The vehicle was heading east towards Poland. Later that day, Florian returned home, only to make the same journey towards Poland the following night at 10:40 p.m. What was even more suspicious was that Jessica, Florian's wife, had been at work during both instances, leaving Florian as the only person who could have been driving the car at those times. The timing of Florian's trips could not have been more critical. February 18th was the day Rebecca disappeared, and the fact that Florian had driven towards Poland on that very morning only heightened police suspicions. Why would he have made such a trip so soon after Rebecca went missing, and then repeat the journey the next night? These details led investigators to formulate a disturbing theory about what had happened that morning. According to the police, it was entirely possible that Rebecca had never walked out of her sister's house to catch the bus, as she had intended. Instead, they theorized that Florian had waited until his wife Jessica left for work before launching a premeditated attack on Rebecca. Afterward, the police believed Florian might have concealed Rebecca's body in his Renault Twingo and driven along the A12 highway towards Poland, intending to dispose of her remains somewhere along the route. The police knew this theory was speculative, but it fit with the available evidence, or more accurately, the lack thereof. No security cameras had captured Rebecca leaving the house. No witnesses had seen her on her way to the bus stop. And now, Florian's suspicious behavior, his late-night internet usage, his untruthful statements, and his unexplained trips towards Poland seemed to point towards his involvement in something terrible. However, despite these mounting suspicions, the authorities had yet to uncover any concrete evidence that tied Florian directly to a crime. According to the authorities, the drive from Florian's home to the Polish border via the A12 highway would take a minimum of 2 hours. This was a significant piece of information, as it allowed investigators to map out potential locations where Florian might have disposed of Rebecca if, as they suspected, he was involved in her disappearance. A series of searches were conducted along the route. The map that authorities presented to the public showed several points of interest. Between March 7th and 29th, these areas were extensively combed by search teams. Despite their thoroughness, no evidence of Rebecca's whereabouts was uncovered during these operations. One of the few tangible pieces of evidence that the police could rely on came from a forensic examination of the Renault Twingo. Inside the vehicle, authorities found several strands of Rebecca's hair, along with fibers that matched the purple blanket she had with her when she disappeared. This, in the eyes of the investigators, was a critical discovery. It seemed to support the theory that Rebecca had been in the car on the day she disappeared, and that Florian might have used the vehicle to transport her after whatever had happened to her at the house. The police believed this was further proof that Florian had some role in Rebecca's disappearance, though the family remained unconvinced. Rebecca's family, particularly her father Rebecca Reusch, continued to defend Florian. They saw the presence of Rebecca's hair and the fibers from her blanket as entirely normal. After all, Rebecca frequently rode in the Renault Twingo with her sister Jessica, who also owned the car. This wasn't unusual, and the family believed the authorities were jumping to conclusions based on circumstantial evidence. Barrett even addressed the press when Florian was arrested for the second time, stating that he knew why Florian had driven to Poland on the 18th and 19th of February. However, he declined to elaborate, citing that it was a personal matter, leading to more speculation from both the media and the public. Journalists relentlessly questioned Barrett, but he maintained his silence on the matter. It wasn't long before rumors began to surface about the nature of Florian's trips to Poland. A few days after Barrett's interview, one of the journalists published an article claiming that Florian had traveled to Poland for drug-related reasons. The story suggested that Florian was involved in drug trafficking, and this was the reason for his suspicious journeys across the border. Rebecca's family confirmed the reports, and Florian himself admitted to his involvement in selling drugs. He explained that his trips to Poland were to deliver a quantity of drugs to an acquaintance, not to dispose of Rebecca's body as the police had feared. Despite this revelation, the authorities couldn't find any solid evidence to link Florian to Rebecca's disappearance. On March 22, Florian was released again, his freedom secured by the absence of any direct proof connecting him to the crime. By this stage, Rebecca's case had captivated not only Germany, but also parts of Europe. Media outlets across the continent closely followed the developments, and public opinion became sharply divided. Many people struggled to understand why Rebecca's family continued to defend Florian so fiercely, despite the evidence that seemed to suggest he was involved. To some, it was clear that Florian's actions, his inconsistent testimony, his secretive trips to Poland, and the forensic evidence, pointed to his culpability. Others, however, sided with the family, believing Florian's drug activities were the reason for his evasive behavior, not any involvement in Rebecca's fate. The lack of any physical evidence along the A12 highway left the German authorities questioning whether Florian might have crossed into Poland to dispose of Rebecca's body. Unable to rule out this possibility, they formally requested assistance from the Polish authorities. Polish search teams were dispatched to comb through areas near the border, concentrating their efforts on regions where Florian's car had been seen. Despite their efforts, the searches yielded nothing, and Rebecca's whereabouts remained a mystery. Aside from Florian, the investigation also looked into other potential suspects. One of the most intriguing was a 15-year-old boy known only as Max. According to Rebecca's family, Max was someone Rebecca had met online, and the two had been in communication for several months leading up to her disappearance. In fact, Just a week before she vanished, Rebecca had asked her family for permission to meet Max in person. However, the family had refused, as Max lived in another city, and they were uncomfortable with Rebecca traveling to meet someone she had only known through the internet. The family believed that Rebecca, frustrated by their decision, might have skipped school on the morning of February 18th to meet Max in secret. Adding to their concerns was the suspicion that Max might not actually be a 15-year-old boy, but rather an adult pretending to be younger to lure girls online. The police took this lead seriously and launched an investigation to track down Max. However, their efforts were quickly complicated by the discovery that Max had deleted all his social media accounts just days after Rebecca disappeared. This raised red flags for the investigators, as it was unusual and suspicious behavior. Without his social media profiles, it became more difficult to locate Max and verify the nature of his relationship with Rebecca. Months of investigation followed, and eventually, the police uncovered information that contradicted the family's timeline. According to their findings, Max and Rebecca had not been in contact for over 6 months before her disappearance. This conflicted with the family's claims that Rebecca and Max were in regular communication and had been planning to meet shortly before she went missing. Despite the initial suspicion surrounding Max, the police eventually ruled him out as a suspect. They concluded that he had no involvement in Rebecca's disappearance, and the investigation into him was dropped. Later on, German journalists Lena Nomer and Miriam Ars launched an investigative podcast dedicated to unraveling the mystery surrounding Rebecca Reusch's disappearance. This podcast, which drew attention nationwide, focused on interviews, case reviews, and theories that had captured the public's imagination. During the course of their research, Lena and Miriam claimed they managed to locate Max, the 15-year-old boy who was initially suspected of being in contact with Rebecca before she vanished. According to their podcast, they spoke with Max, who confirmed what the police had previously concluded. He and Rebecca had not communicated for over 6 months prior to her disappearance. Max explained that while they had once spoken every day, their conversations had dwindled gradually until they stopped altogether. One of the key points that initially raised suspicion about Max was the sudden disappearance of his social media accounts shortly after Rebecca went missing. However, Lena and Miriam mentioned that Max had no solid explanation for this, suggesting that it may have been coincidental. In addition to Max, the authorities investigated another individual, Lucas, one of Rebecca's classmates. According to Rebecca Reusch, Rebecca's mother, Lucas and Rebecca had been involved in a heated argument at school just a few days before her disappearance. Concerned about the dispute, Bridget had even gone to the school to speak with Lucas, hoping to smooth things over. The police questioned Lucas as part of their investigation, but quickly ruled him out as a suspect. On the day of Rebecca's disappearance, Lucas had been at school, surrounded by other students, and there was no evidence linking him to the case. As time passed and no definitive leads emerged, a series of reported sightings of Rebecca began to surface. One of the earliest came from a woman who claimed to have seen Rebecca at a bus stop not long after she was reported missing. After this alleged sighting, other people came forward, some saying they had seen Rebecca on a bus, while others claimed she had been spotted near the city center. The police followed up on these reports, investigating the various claims, but none could be confirmed. Whether these sightings were genuine or the result of confusion, mistaken identity, or simply people seeking attention remains unknown. The lack of concrete evidence led to an array of theories about what might have happened to Rebecca. One such theory was that she had secretly traveled to South Korea to meet her idols, the members of the popular K-pop group BTS. Although this theory captured the public's imagination, especially given Rebecca's known admiration for the band, it was quickly dismissed as implausible. Traveling from Germany to South Korea as a teenager, unnoticed and unassisted, would be extraordinarily difficult. Another theory speculated that Rebecca may have fallen victim to human trafficking. Some believed that she might have skipped school to meet someone she had connected with online, which initially led investigators to focus on Max. But since Max was no longer a suspect, the theory shifted to the possibility that Rebecca had been lured by someone else. This idea seemed to hold some weight, given the rising concerns in Europe over human trafficking, but once again there was no evidence to support it. The police could not definitively prove that Rebecca had been taken against her will, and with no other online contacts coming to light, the theory remained speculative. For the police, Florian remained the primary suspect throughout the investigation. Despite being cleared and released twice due to insufficient evidence, the police repeatedly returned to the theory that Florian had something to do with Rebecca's disappearance. By 2020, the investigation reached a new stage when the prosecution requested Google to recover data from both Rebecca's and Florian's mobile phones. These records were stored on servers in Dublin, Ireland, and the authorities hoped they might reveal new leads or information. Unfortunately, when the data was returned in early 2021, it contained nothing of relevance to the case. Even with modern technological resources, the police found themselves no closer to solving the mystery. In April 2023, the police made another significant move, conducting a new search of Florian's house. This time, they performed acoustic tests, attempting to determine if Rebecca could have been suffocated inside the home without anyone hearing it. They also searched for items that could have been used to smother her. Despite these renewed efforts, nothing substantial was uncovered, leaving investigators back at square one. The disappearance of Rebecca Reusch garnered widespread attention in Germany, becoming one of the most talked about criminal cases in recent history. Missing persons expert Peter Jamin described it as one of the most highly publicized cases the country had ever seen, second only to the infamous disappearance of Madeleine McCann. The German public followed the case closely, drawn to its complexity and the numerous unanswered questions surrounding it. As with many high-profile disappearances, the case has generated a great deal of public speculation, with everyone from online sleuths to criminologists offering their own interpretations of what might have happened. In a heartbreaking interview, Bernd and Bridget Reusch spoke of their deep conviction that their daughter would someday be found. To this day, they, as well as the public, wait for answers. The case remains one of the most mysterious in Germany's recent history, and the entire country wonders what happened to Rebecca Reusch.